Four apocalypse colors. Picture this. You're reading Revelation for the first time, and before the chaos even begins, you notice something quiet. Color. White, red, black, and pale. These aren't decorative choices, they're a coded intelligence briefing on the nature of what's coming. White, in the ancient world, was the color of victory. Roman generals would ride white horses through the streets after a conquest. So when you see white in Revelation, it signals divine authority, something or someone that is already won. Red is raw. It's the color of blood, of war, of the ground after a battle. It speaks to the violence that men do to each other when power becomes the only goal. Black is the color of scarcity. It's what famine looks like from a distance: dark skies, dried earth, empty hands. And then there's pale. The Greek word used is chloros, green-gray, the color of a corpse. Death doesn't arrive like an explosion in Revelation. It arrives quietly, like a pallor settling over something that was once alive. These four colors show up early because they're meant to be recognized again and again throughout the book. They're a visual language. Once you learn them, you stop reading Revelation like a horror story and start reading it like a field report from someone who has already seen the outcome. The colors don't describe what might happen. They describe what evil always looks like, the same patterns wearing different faces across every generation. 7 sacred numbers. Numbers in Revelation aren't random. They never were. The ancient world, Hebrew, Greek, Roman, understood that certain numbers carried meaning far beyond their arithmetic value. 7 was the most significant. It meant completeness. God rested on the seventh day, not because he was tired, but because the work was whole. So when Revelation speaks of 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 churches, 7 angels, it's not building suspense through repetition. It's signaling that what you're witnessing is the full, unabbreviated plan of God. 3 is divine perfection. 4 is the earth, 4 corners, 4 winds, 4 directions. 12 is covenant, 12 tribes, 12 apostles, the structure of God's relationship with his people. 10 signals totality of earthly power. And 1,000? 1,000 in that culture often didn't mean a literal number. It meant beyond counting, beyond human measurement. 6 famously falls one short of 7. It's the number of almost. Human effort that looks complete but isn't. The mark of the beast being 666 isn't 3 sixes for dramatic effect. It's the number of human pride tripled. A system that glorifies itself as divine, but keeps falling short over and over. Understanding this number language is like being handed the cipher key for the whole book. Without it, Revelation sounds like chaos. With it, it reads like a letter from someone who has known the ending from the very beginning. 4 heavenly creatures. There are 4 living creatures surrounding the throne in Revelation, and they don't look like anything you'd casually sketch. A lion, an ox, a face like a man's, a soaring eagle, full of eyes, covered in wings, crying, "Holy, holy, holy," without stopping. They sound terrifying, but here's what's worth understanding. These 4 creatures represent the highest expression of created life. The lion is the king of wild beasts. The ox is the greatest of domesticated creatures, the one that bears the heaviest burdens. The man represents the pinnacle of rational, moral being, and the eagle rules the skies, untouchable, far-seeing. Together, they're a picture of the created order standing at full attention before its creator. These same symbols appear in Ezekiel centuries earlier near the river Chebar in one of the most disorienting visions in all of Scripture. John wasn't introducing something new, he was recognizing something ancient. The creatures also map onto the 4 Gospels in early Christian tradition: Matthew the man, Mark the lion, Luke the ox, John the eagle. Whether or not you hold to that mapping, the point is consistent. These creatures exist at the intersection of heaven and earth. They're a reminder that worship isn't a quiet, polite thing. It's the entire created order in full voice acknowledging who is actually in charge. That sound never stops, according to Revelation. It's still happening right now. 4 Horsemen ride. The Four Horsemen are probably the most recognized images in all of Revelation, and yet they're almost always misread. People treat them like a checklist of future disasters, but the horsemen aren't arriving in sequence for the first time at the end of history. They've been riding through history the whole time. Conquest on the white horse comes first, not necessarily a single person, but the spirit of imperial ambition, the desire of one power to dominate all others. That force has never taken a day off. The red horse carries war, not a single war, but the pattern of war. The moment that conquest fails to hold, violence fills the gap. The black horse carries famine, and the detail here is striking. Revelation 6:6 says, "A day's wages for a loaf of bread, but the oil and wine, the luxury goods of the wealthy, remain untouched." That's not just ancient economics. That's a description of how scarcity works in every era. The poor bear the weight of it, while the comfortable remain insulated. The pale horse carries death, and behind death comes Hades, collecting. The Four Horsemen aren't predictions. They're the four recurring symptoms of a world operating without acknowledgement of God. Every civilization that has ever collapsed has looked at some point like it was watching these four ride through it. Knowing that doesn't make it less painful, but it does make it less surprising. Three great enemies. Every resistance briefing names the enemy clearly. Revelation does the same. There are three primary adversarial figures in the book, and they function as a dark mirror of the Trinity. The dragon, Satan, is the source of the opposition. Ancient, intelligent, driven by a rage that is almost impossible to fully explain. He is the power behind the curtain, the one who hands authority to the others. The sea beast is the political and military manifestation of that power. Empire, force, intimidation, the boot on the neck of the faithful. It rises from the sea, which in Hebrew symbolism represented chaos and the unknown. Then there's the earth beast, also called the false prophet, the religious and cultural machine that makes the first two palatable. It doesn't come with obvious violence. It comes with speeches, with miracles that look convincing, with a system that makes worshiping the beast feel reasonable, even necessary. Together, the three form a counterfeit: power without righteousness, authority without accountability, worship without truth. The early church recognized this immediately because they were living under it. Rome was the sea beast. The imperial cult with its priests and temples demanding worship of Caesar was the earth beast, and behind all of it, Revelation says, is an ancient enemy who has never stopped believing he can win. He can't. But understanding how the three work together helps you recognize the pattern whenever it reappears, and it always reappears. Two divine objects. In the throne room of Revelation, two objects carry extraordinary weight. The first is the seven-sealed scroll. When it appears, no one in heaven or earth is found worthy to open it, and John weeps. Imagine that. An apostle, in the middle of a vision of heaven itself, breaks down crying because the scroll can't be opened. That's how much the sealed scroll represents. It's the title deed of creation, the full revelation of God's purposes, the redemptive plan locked behind conditions no fallen being could meet. Then a voice says, "Look, the Lion of Judah has prevailed." And John turns, expecting a lion. What he sees instead is a lamb, standing as if it had been slain. That's one of the most quietly devastating images in Scripture. The victory was purchased through sacrifice, not conquest. The second object is the golden censer, a bowl used by the priests in the temple to carry burning incense. In Revelation 8, the smoke of that incense rises before God, mingled with the prayers of the saints. Every prayer ever offered by anyone who trusted God, the frightened, the exhausted, the ones who prayed with no certainty of being heard, all of it is in that bowl. And when the angel hurls it to the earth, the response is thunder and earthquakes. The two objects together say this: the plan is sealed and already won, and your prayers are not disappearing into silence. They're accumulating. Three judgment plagues. Revelation organizes its judgments into three cycles: the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls. And this structure is intentional. Each cycle intensifies, but each also follows the same basic logic. The seals reveal what evil does to the world from the inside: war, famine, death, persecution. These aren't God dropping disasters arbitrarily. These are the natural consequences of a world that has chosen autonomy over alignment with its creator. The trumpets are warnings: partial destruction, a third of the trees, a third of the sea, a third of the rivers. In the ancient world, trumpets were used to signal an approaching army or to call people to assembly. These aren't the final word. They're the loud, unmistakable signal that the final word is coming. The bowls are the fullness, poured out completely without the partial restraint of the trumpets. But even here, something worth noting: between the cycles, Revelation keeps pausing to show the people of God being sealed, being protected, singing in the throne room. The judgments are not the main story. They're the context around the main story. The main story is always about the ones who held on. The structure of 3 escalating cycles mirrors something deeply human: warning, consequence, completion. It's the grammar of divine patience meeting the limit of human rebellion. And when the bowls are finally poured, it reads less like fury and more like the inevitable result of a choice made long ago. 2 symbolic women. 2 women dominate Revelation's narrative, and they could not be more different. The first appears in chapter 12, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon beneath her feet, a crown of 12 stars on her head. She's in labor, and a great dragon waits to devour her child. She represents the people of God across all of history: Israel, who brought forth the Messiah, and the church that continues his mission. She's not glorified and comfortable. She's in pain, in the wilderness, sustained only because God makes provision for her. The second woman appears later: Babylon the Great, the harlot, dressed in purple and scarlet, drunk on the blood of the saints. She's seated on many waters, which Revelation itself explains as peoples, nations, and languages. She's the spirit of worldly empire, seductive, wealthy, intoxicating, and ultimately hollow. She makes kings rich and populations compliant. She's not one city or one nation. She's the recurring spiritual character of any system that places wealth, pleasure, and power above truth. The contrast between the 2 women is the contrast between 2 ways of living in the world. One is costly, vulnerable, and protected by God from behind. The other is comfortable, powerful, and moving steadily toward a collapse it cannot see coming. Every generation has had to decide which woman it resembles: the one in the wilderness or the one on the throne. 3 celestial signs. The sun, moon, and stars appear throughout Revelation not as astronomy, but as authority. In the ancient Jewish imagination, the heavenly bodies were symbols of established order. When they're disturbed, it signals that the order of the world is being shaken at its foundations. When the sun turns black and the moon becomes blood in Revelation 6, it echoes the language of the prophets before it: Joel, Isaiah, Ezekiel, all of whom used these same images to describe moments of divine judgment on earthly powers. The sun going dark doesn't mean the literal star extinguishes. It means the sources of light and stability that people depend on, governments, economies, cultural certainties, are failing. Stars falling from heaven were a symbol of the powerful being removed from their places of authority. This is why Jesus himself uses the same language in Matthew 24. He wasn't giving a science lesson. He was speaking in a symbolic register his listeners understood immediately. The woman clothed with the sun in chapter 12 wears these celestial signs as clothing. She's wrapped in divine glory, standing on the moon, crowned by stars. The same symbols that elsewhere signal collapse, when placed on the people of God, signal covering and honor. That contrast matters. The same sky that signals the end of one order signals the arrival of another. The celestial signs in Revelation are never just about catastrophe. They're about the transfer of authority from systems that fail to a kingdom that doesn't. 2 rival cities. Revelation ends with a city. But to understand the ending, you have to understand the contrast that comes before it. Babylon rises first, the great city, the dominant civilization, the center of everything powerful and desirable. She's not just a reference to ancient Mesopotamia, she's every Rome, every empire that has ever seduced people into believing that human achievement is the highest goal. Her fall in Revelation 18 is described with genuine mourning, merchants weeping, sailors watching her burn from a distance, because people genuinely loved what she represented: comfort, stability, prosperity. The mourning is real, and Revelation doesn't mock it. It acknowledges that the things Babylon offered were appealing, even if they were built on corruption. Then comes the New Jerusalem, descending from heaven like a bride prepared for her husband. Notice that. It descends. It isn't built from the ground up by human effort. It comes down. Its walls are jasper. Its streets are gold, described as transparent glass. Its gates are single pearls. The dimensions are a perfect cube, the same shape as the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple. The whole city is a sanctuary. There's no temple in it, Revelation says, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. No more separation, no more distance. The two cities aren't just settings, they're two visions of what human community can be, organized around exploitation or organized around presence. 3 harvest symbols. Harvest runs through Revelation like a recurring drumbeat. The sickle, the winepress, and the grain each carry their own meaning, but together they form a complete picture of how the end of history is described. The sickle appears in chapter 14, and it carries echoes of Joel 3, the ancient harvest metaphor for judgment and gathering. A sickle doesn't distinguish between grain. It cuts everything in its path. The grain harvest represents the gathering of the righteous, the ones who are brought into the barn, protected, kept. But the next image in the same chapter is darker. Another angel swings his sickle over the earth's vine, and the grapes are thrown into the great winepress of God's wrath. The winepress is one of Revelation's most visceral images, grapes crushed until blood flows for 1,600 stadia, as high as a horse's bridle. It's deliberately intense. The violence of that image is meant to communicate that evil done in history is not simply erased and forgotten. It's met with equal weight. The grain harvest and the grape harvest stand side by side, not to say God takes pleasure in either judgment or mercy, but to say both are real, both are coming. The same chapter that contains the winepress also contains the angel declaring the eternal gospel to every nation. The harvest symbols don't exist to frighten, they exist to clarify what is at stake and to make the urgency of choosing visible. The field is always ready to be harvested. The question is always which harvest you belong to. Christ's 2 faces. The final image worth holding on to is the one Revelation gives us of Christ himself. Not one image, but 2, and they belong together. In chapter 5, the announced lion turns into a lamb when John looks, standing as if slaughtered, 7 horns, 7 eyes. That lamb is the one who is found worthy to open the scroll. He doesn't win by force. He wins by having already given everything. This is the image that sustains the church through every hard chapter of the book. Not a distant deity issuing orders, but a lamb who stood in the place of the condemned and absorbed what should have destroyed them. Then, in chapter 19, the scene shifts. A white horse, a rider with eyes like flame, a robe dipped in blood, a name written that no one fully knows. The armies of heaven follow him, not into battle. The battle is over before it begins. The sword comes from his mouth, meaning the word is the weapon. The same Jesus who gave himself in the first image returns in the second as the one who finalizes what his sacrifice already secured. The 2 images aren't contradictions. The lamb and the warrior are the same person at different points in the same story. For the people reading Revelation under pressure, under threat, wondering if any of it was worth it, these 2 images were the answer. The one who bled for you is the same one riding toward the finish line. You're not waiting for someone who doesn't know what you've been through. You're waiting for someone who went through it first.